Welcome to the Operating System and Linux class. This is session 9. I'm Manibhushan D'Souza. In the last class, we have seen the first part of interprocess communication. Let us proceed with the second part. In the first part, we have seen direct communication. So now let's look at the indirect communication. So let's recall what is a direct communication. So in the direct communication, we had two processes. Let's say we have a process P1 and we have one other process, let's say P2, and there was a direct link between the two processes. So this is called as the direct communication. So there was no intermediary. So directly the process P1 is to send to the process P2, and the process P2 is to receive the communication. In the same way, process P2 sends it and P1 receives it. However, in this case, the communication slightly changes. In this case, the message is not directly sent to the P1 or P2. Instead, the message is sent to a mailbox, or it's also called as port. So P1 sends the message to a mailbox and P2 receives the message from that mailbox. So mailbox can be considered as an abstract object that receives the message and keeps the message until it is removed by somebody else. Naturally, there can be more than one mailboxes, and every mailbox has to be identified, and every mailbox has a unique identification. So how a process has a unique ID, mailboxes also has a ID. Now you must understand one important thing here. Now if you have two processes, so let's say P1 and P2, let me give that thing. Let's say we have a process P1 and let's say we have a process P2, and if they have to communicate with each other, there must be a mailbox, and that's not the end of it. This mailbox must be shareable. So you can say that I have a mailbox, but that is not shared with the other side. If the mailbox is not shared, it is not possible for the process to communicate with the other process. Now, how does the send and receive primitive changes in case of a direct communication? So we have seen in the direct communication, we say send and we give the name of the process, and we also give the name of the process, say P1, P, Q, R, whatever it is, P1, P2, whatever it is. So we, in the direct communication, not the indirect communication, in the direct communication, we say send to the name of the process and the message. Receive from the name of the process the message. What about the indirect communication? Indirect communication, the same concept is being used. Send to the mailbox. So this A is the mailbox. Send to the mailbox A this message. Again, receive from the mailbox A this message. So the idea remains same, but we have a new thing over here, that is the mailbox. Now we have seen about the properties of the communication link in the direct communication. In the same way, a indirect communication can also have a link in the indirect communication can also have some properties. Now, what are the properties that are associated with the link in an indirect communication? Okay. First and the foremost important thing, suppose we have two processes. Let me draw that thing. Suppose we have two processes. Let me say this is the process P1, and let me say this is the process P2. Now if they have to have a link between them, okay, there must be a shared mailbox. So there must be a mailbox. So let me say MB is the mailbox that is shared between the two communication processes. So that's the one thing. So a link establishes a pair, okay, or a connection between the pair of processes, provided they have a shared mailbox. Okay, very important thing. A link may be associated with more than two processes. What do we mean by saying that is you can also have one other process, let's say P3, that also shares the same mailbox. In this case, the link of P1 is shared between P3 and P2. So a link may be associated with more than two processes. One other thing, number of different links may exist between each pair. So what is the meaning of that is you can have one more mailbox. Let's say I have one, let's say, let me draw a mailbox here. So I have a mailbox, let me say this is M2, I'll just give a name M2, which is also shared between the two processes. So there is one mailbox, say M1, which is shared between P1 and P2. Also there is one more bit that is shared between P1 and P2. So number of different links may exist between each pair of communicating process. Okay, each link has one corresponding mailbox. So if you take this link, suppose if you take this link there is one mailbox, this link there is one other mailbox. So there are two mailboxes, you can have number of mailboxes. So a communicating process, two communicating process may have more than one link. So that's a different thing from the direct communication, wherein there was only one link between the two communicating processes. Now let's look at three processes, P1, P2, P3. So we have three processes over here, and let's say I'm going to draw a mailbox here. So let's assume that you have a mailbox here. Let me draw it again. So you have a mailbox here. This particular mailbox is shared between P1, P2 and P3. All the three share the same mailbox. Let me call this one as the mailbox A. Now suppose if P1 sends a message, suppose if P1 sends a message to the mailbox A, then the question comes, okay, who will receive the message? Because it is shared between both of them, okay, it can be obtained by P2 or it can also obtained by P3, okay. One among them can execute that message. Suppose if the P1 sends a message saying that one of you have to, okay, find the square root of 16 to me. So let's say the P1 sends a message, and that message says find the square root of 16. Now P1 has sent the message, P2 can find the square root of 16, or P3 can also find the square root of 16. Both of them can receive the message and then execute now. Now the question comes, who is going to receive it, whether the P1 or P2? It depends on the scheme that you are choosing. Now if you say that, suppose if this says that if you allow the only at most two processes to communicate between the link, suppose if you have a mailbox, and you are saying that only two processes can use it. In this case, suppose a message is sent, then who will process the message? Naturally the other one. Suppose if you have a P1 here, so if P1 sends a message, who is going to receive this message is P2, because there are only two processes, at most two processes, okay. Now the other one is allow at most one process at a time to execute it. So you allow, the next question is you allow more than one. So you have P1, P2, P3 and so on and so forth. So allow more than one process, but a given message has to be processed by only one. So in that case, P1 sends a message, one among them will be arbitrarily selected and the message will be sent to that particular process, and whoever receives the message will have to do the calculation or do whatever that message says and then complete the task, but not both of them. So it depends on how the communication link, what is the scheme that you are using. So if you allow, if you say that at most one of them only can do it, in that case arbitrarily one of them will be selected and it is given the task. Okay. Now the other question is, so I said there is a mailbox. Now all of us have the email and we also have a mailbox. Now who owns that mailbox? Some other mail vendors like Gmail or Hotmail or Yahoo Mail or any other, somebody else owns it. So similarly, a process has a mailbox. Let's assume that you have a process has a mailbox. Now who owns that mailbox? Either the process may own it or the operating system may own it. Okay. Now suppose if the process owns it, okay, now when a message is sent by somebody else, who is going to read it? Now I know all of you have email, okay, all of you have a mailbox. If I send a mail to you, who is going to read your mail? Naturally you will read it. So if a process has a mailbox, who is going to read the message? Naturally the whoever owns that mailbox will read that. There is no confusion about it. Okay. Now the other question will come. Remember, I have a email account. Now every now and then I may not read the mail. Okay, the mail comes and whenever I am free I can read it. Now let's assume that you have a process P1. It has a mailbox. So let's say I will draw it. So let me assume that we have a process, say P1. Let's assume that, and it has a mailbox. So let's draw a mailbox here. So I have, let's assume that you have a mailbox, okay, and somebody sends a message and it receives it. No doubt somebody sends a message and it receives it. Somebody sends a message and it receives it, but after some time what happens? The process P1 terminates. Okay, so it's obvious, is it not? A process can't run forever. After some time the process will terminate. In that case what will happen? Now if the process terminates, the process that owns the mailbox terminate, the mailbox will also disappear. Now once the mailbox disappear, if anybody sends a message, now let's assume that this mailbox process closed and that's why this mailbox also disappeared, but somebody don't know that the mailbox is closed and they send the message to this mailbox which is already closed or it has disappeared. Now in that case they will get a message error saying that operating system will say that such a mailbox does not exist because the process which created it has terminated. Okay. Now the other question will come is should a process maintain it or give it to the operating system? Now a mailbox can be owned by the operating system also. Okay, in that case it is independent of any particular process. So if the operating system maintains the mailbox, so if see there are two possibilities, either a process can own a mailbox or operating system can own a mailbox. If the operating system owns a mailbox, then it must allow the process to create their mailboxes, send and receive messages to that mailboxes, and then definitely delete that mailboxes whenever that is required. So these services has to be provided. Okay, so a process that creates a new mailbox is assumed to be the default owner of that mailbox. Suppose you have a process. If the process creates a new mailbox, so that means, suppose if I create a email account, then I am the owner. So it is as simple as that. So a process which creates a new mailbox is assumed to be the owner. Okay. Now owner is the one who can only receive the message, because I own the message, I only receive it. However, there are system calls are available that allows a process to give the privilege to the others. So a process may say that, okay, I am the owner, but I will give my ownership to somebody else. So it is like you share the you have your email account. Suppose if you share the password with somebody else, then they will also become the owner of that email account. Okay, they can also receive the message. In the same way, if the particular process may say that, okay, I will give the permission to somebody else. In that case, multiple process can receive the mail, or in the other words, a message sent by the others. Okay. Now the next question is about the synchronization. So suppose you have a process. Let's draw the process. Suppose you have a process and you have a mailbox. Suppose if the process sends a message to the mailbox, so if it sends a message, can it continue with its execution? So can it go and continue with its execution, or should it wait? So if it has to wait for this particular message to be consumed by somebody else has to read that message, until then it cannot proceed. If suppose that is the case, and then we say that it is blocking. So you send a message to the mailbox until that message is consumed by other process. Somebody else reads this message. Suppose somebody else is reading, until somebody else reads the message, you cannot continue. If that's the case, then it is called as blocking. Suppose you send the message to the mailbox, it stays in the mailbox, so it is there in the mailbox, okay, and you continue with your work. In that case, it is non-blocking. Okay, it's also called as synchronous. Synchronous means you send the message, you wait until somebody reads it, and then you continue. Synchronizing. Asynchronous, you send the message, forget it, you do something else on your own. Okay, so that becomes asynchronous. So what is blocking send? There are two things that will come. Blocking send. Okay, a sending process is blocked until the message is received by the receiving process. So you send the message, until that is received by the receiving party or the receiving process, you wait, your process is blocked. That is called as blocking send. What is non-blocking send? Non-blocking send is you send the message and you continue with the operation. So the process sends the message and resumes its operation. So that is non-blocking. This is regarding the send. What about the receiving side? Receiving side, it is the same thing. Okay, so receiver is blocked until the message is available. So if you say I am supposed to get a message from Mr. X, you cannot proceed until you get the message. So if the receiver says I am supposed to receive a message, wait until the message comes, then only you continue with the work. Okay, that is block receive. What is non-blocking receive? When there is a message or not, you just when the retrieve the mail, as in when it is the retrieve the message, it may be valid or invalid, then you continue. You don't wait for the message. If the message is there, you retrieve it, otherwise don't retrieve it. It's simple as that. Non-blocking. Okay, now there are many possibilities are there, like blocking send, non-blocking receive, non-blocking send, blocking receive, and so on. Possibilities are there. Okay, now when you have both the send and receive are blocking, so suppose there are possibilities. See, you can say send is blocked, receiver is unblocked. That means sender has to wait, but the receiver, there is no problem. If you say blocking receiver, that means sender can do anything, receiver has to wait. Okay, or both the sender and receivers are not bothered. The possibility. The fourth possibility is both the sender and receiver are bothered about the message. That means sender sends a message, he waits, or the process waits, the receiver receives the message, and until the message is received it waits. So this is a synchronization. There is a kind of synchronization between them. We say that it is a synchronized process. Sender sends, waits until the receiver receives, the receiver waits until it receives it. So synchronization. Otherwise there is no synchronization. Okay. Now, whether you are communicating using direct or indirect messages, the messages are temporarily kept in a queue. So, message resides in that particular queue. Now, this queue can be implemented in many different ways. One of the ways in which the queue is implemented is a zero capacity queue. So, what is the meaning of it is? So, when let's assume that you have a process here, you have a process P1. Let me say there is a process P1, okay, and when the message of P1 is sent, it is kept in a queue. So P1 sends the message, okay, this particular message is kept in the queue. Now how many messages can be kept inside a queue? Suppose if the capacity is 0, that means no messages can be kept in the queue. What is the meaning of it? If the process P1 is sending the message, it must be received by somebody else. Okay, so a link cannot have any process waiting. So it's like a direct communication. You send it, the other side has to receive. It cannot stay in the queue because the capacity of the queue is 0. It can't hold any message. So what is the meaning of it? Sender is blocked until receiver receives it. So sender cannot send until the receiver receives it, because the queue does not allow the sender to store anything on the queue because its capacity is 0. So sender has to wait until it is received. So that is 0 capacity. Then you have bounded capacity. What is the meaning of saying bounded? So there the queue has a certain length. So let's assume that we have a process. Let's say we have a process, and let's assume that there is a queue and the process sends it. Now this queue has a length. Let me say the length is n messages. N can be 1, n can be 2, n can be 3, n can be 10, n can be 100. Suppose if the n is equal to 10, that means it can hold 10 messages. The queue can hold 10 messages. So if the process is sending the message to the queue up to 10 messages, the process doesn't have to wait because the queue can hold up to 10 messages. But the 11th message can't be given. Suppose if all the 10 messages are not consumed, it sends a first message, a second message, third message, and so on. All the 10 messages are not consumed. Let's assume that the capacity of this queue is 10 and there are 10 messages in the queue. Assume that there are 10 messages. 11th message can't be given because the capacity of the queue is 10. So in that case the sender has to wait. Otherwise sender doesn't have to wait. Okay. Next way in which it can be done is unbounded capacity. So what is the meaning of saying unbounded capacity? The capacity of the queue is unlimited. That means the sender doesn't have to bother about the queue. The sender can keep on sending the message because the size of the queue is very, very large. So it can hold any number of queues, any number of messages. That means to say that a sender is not blocked at all. Okay. Now when we talk about zero capacity queue, what is the meaning of saying zero capacity? There is no provision for storing a message in the queue. So that is a zero capacity. It is also referred as a system with no buffering. So it is as simple as you don't have a buffer at all. It is a direct link. All the other cases are called as automatic buffering. So that's all in this today's class. So we will meet again in the other class. If you're really interested in knowing more about this particular concept, please refer Galvin's book on operating system concept. Thank you for your interest.